There's no such thing as sight reading. And these are my 5 jazz eighth note, swing, bebop, accent, articulation rules. So rule 1 is the peaks will always receive an accent. And the peak, that just means if you have an eighth note and the note before it is lower, a lower pitch, and the note after it is a lower pitch, well, then that's a peak. And so that's going to receive an accent. It doesn't matter if it's an upbeat or downbeat. Doesn't make any difference. It's going to be about half and half. About half your peaks will be downs and half will be ups. It doesn't matter. The peaks are going to receive an accent. So in measure 1, the downbeat of 2 is a peak. Note before it's lower, note after it's lower. That's a peak. It's going to receive an accent. Downbeat of 1 of measure 2. That's also a peak. Note before it's lower, note after it's lower. That's a peak. It's going to receive an accent. The upbeat of 3 in measure 2 is a peak. Peaks can be on upbeats. Peaks can be on downbeats. We're also going to designate the peak as being one of our bopped notes. This is going to be important to one of our later rules. And so always accent the peak. Rule 2, the valleys are going to be quiet notes. Doesn't matter if they're upbeats or downbeats, right? You're always quiet on the valleys. If the note before it's higher, the note after it's higher, that eighth note is a valley, so it's going to be a quiet note. So in bar 1, the upbeat of 1 is a valley. Note before it's higher, note after it's higher, that's a valley. It's going to be a quiet note. About half and half will be ups versus downs. Now, rule 3, we're going to always accent the first and last eighth notes of the phrase. And that last eighth note of the phrase, we're going to designate that as also one of our bop notes, which is going to be important to the next rule. Now, first and last note of the phrase, that just means there's silence in front of it. It's got an accent. If there's silence after it, it's got an accent. Right? First note of the phrase, there's silence before it. Last note of the phrase, there's silence after it. So in measure 1, the downbeat of 1, first note of the song, that's going to be an accented note. That's the first note of the phrase. The upbeat of 2 has a rest after it. That's the last note of the phrase. That's going to be an accented note. First and last note of the phrase can be downbeats or upbeats. It's irrelevant. About half and half are downs, half and half are ups. Right? They're going to be always accented regardless. Now, rule 4, it took me a long time to piece together. For many years, I had 4 jazz articulation style rules, and then there were exceptions. And it took a long time to find a rule that eliminated all those exceptions. And what I discovered, the reason it was so elusive, is because this rule has a variable built into it. And the rule is the note preceding a bop note, the note immediately preceding a bop note will always be quiet. So remember, a bop note is a peak, an eighth note peak, or the last eighth note of a phrase. Those are always going to get an accent. You want to bring those notes out. One of the ways that you accent those notes is by putting a quiet thing right in front of it. So the rule is the note immediately preceding the bop note is always a quiet note. But here's the exception. The variable is sometimes you have 2 bop notes in a row. You can have a peak followed by the last note of the phrase, and then you have 2 accents in a row. So you always make the note preceding the bop note quiet unless it is also a bop note. So if you look at line 1, the downbeat of measure 3 is a peak, so that's a bop note, so you're going to slur the upbeat of 4 preceding it. If you look down to line 3, measure 2, the upbeat of 4, the G, that's the last note of the phrase, so the note preceding it will be a quiet note. But if you look back up to measure 3, line 1 again, the upbeat of 4, the F is the last note of the phrase, so typically the note before it would be quiet, but the note before it is a peak, so in this case we have 2 bop notes in a row. Now, the note preceding a bop note, about half of them be on downbeats, about half of them be on upbeats. So whether or not it's a downbeat or upbeat still is irrelevant at this point. We're about 50-50 accenting downs versus ups at this point. Rule 5. When 1 through 4 do not apply, you accent the upbeats and you play quiet on the downbeats. So if your eighth note is not a peak, if it's not a valley, if it's not the first or last note of the phrase, and it's not the note before a bop note, then for the notes that are left over, you're going to accent the ups and play quiet on the downs. And this is what tips the scale and gives this impression that the accents are always falling on the upbeats. They're not always falling on the upbeats. Most of the other notes are going to be in one of those other four categories. Right? If you look at the beginning of opera vav here, we start off, you accent the first note of the phrase, then you play quiet on the valley, then you accent the peak, then you accent the last note of the phrase, and then the downbeat of 4 is the first eighth note of the phrase, so that gets an accent, and the B flat's a valley, so that's going to be a quiet note. And then the downbeat of 1 is a peak, so that's going to get an accent. The upbeat of 1, the D is the last note of the phrase, and then we accent the first note of the phrase, accent the peak. Now the G, downbeat of 4 in measure 2, that's not a peak, not a valley, not the first or last note of the phrase, and not the note before a bop note, so it's a downbeat, so it's going to be a quiet note. Well, that's the first one. Most of these notes are going to fall into one of those other four categories, and so you certainly don't accent all of the upbeats. It's probably going to be like 60-40. Now, what are you going to do with these rules? Well, you're not just going to memorize the rules and try to remember to do all this stuff while you're playing. Now, at first, with my students, I'll write the articulations into their transcription of their etudes so that they know where to place their accents. But remember, you still have to learn this style by imitation and through listening. So the main thing you're going to do is armed with this information, you're going to listen to your favorite jazz players, and you're going to check and see if these accents line up. Now, you're going to hear that whoever your favorite players are, they're accenting these notes the vast majority of the time, right? More than 90%, some of them 100% of the time, right? But you still have to learn the style through imitation. But if you're listening to your favorite jazz players and you're trying to imitate, and you know in your head, you know what they're doing while you're listening and while you're imitating, it's going to really speed up and make this process much more efficient. And so jazz style is an articulation style, and that articulation style is created by strategic placement of your accents. And so if you follow these guidelines, you will always sound like you're playing correct jazz articulation style. My name is Mark Dooley. I've been a private music teacher for 37 years, focused on practical theory and music literacy. If you'd like to hear more, follow me. If you'd like lessons, contact me. If you can learn how to read words, you can learn how to read music.